It's being called one of the largest digital data breaches in history.
It's wild how every time PlayStation has even the smallest issue, you see the same tired comments popping up, switch to Xbox, or Microsoft has your back, as if Xbox is some shining example of consumer-friendly gaming. But let's be real, most of the people saying this aren't even thinking. They're just repeating stuff they saw in a random comment section without actually looking at the facts. So let's break this down properly. So Sony finally told us what they're doing to make up for the PSN outage. If you have PlayStation Plus, you're getting 5 extra days added to your subscription. That's it, nothing more. The outage itself lasted about 24 hours, so basically if your weekend gaming plans got wrecked, Sony's saying, hey, here's 5 days, we cool now.
We're sorry. We're sorry.
Now, let's be real for a second. People are not happy about this. Just scrolling through replies on social media, you can see the reaction is mostly wait. That's it. A lot of people were hoping for like a free month or at least something a little more substantial. Some folks are even asking for a free game, which okay, that might be pushing it, but still 5 days feels kinda weak. It's not like Sony's struggling financially. They could have done a little more, especially considering how frustrating this whole thing was for PlayStation players. And the frustration wasn't just about losing access, it was the complete silence from Sony while it was happening. Everything was down the status page, was just a sea of red, and yet no updates, no estimate for when things would be fixed, nothing, just radio silence. I get that they probably didn't want to give a time frame and then miss it, but some kind of acknowledgement beyond we're working on it would have helped. Instead, everyone was just left refreshing Twitter hoping for scraps of info. Then when they finally did explain what happened, it was just operational issue. Like cool, but what does that even mean? Was it a technical failure, a cyber attack, a server meltdown? No details, just a vague corporate shrug. And sure, maybe they'll give a better explanation later, but right now, it just feels like they're brushing it off. So yeah, the service is back, people are playing again, and life moves on. But between the lack of communication and the kind of bare minimum compensation, it's hard not to feel like Sony dropped the ball on this. Do you think they'll actually learn from this? Or is this just how it's gonna be every time PSN goes down? One of the funniest things to come out of this PSN outage was seeing people completely lose their minds in the comment sections saying stuff like, oh no, you can't play any of your games at all, not even single-player ones. Like, where did this even come from? Who started this ridiculous rumor? Because the reality is the exact opposite. My guy, literally every single word in your comment is wrong. PSN was down, but you could still play all of your games. Digital, physical, PlayStation Plus games, everything. The only thing that didn't work was online multiplayer, which yeah, makes sense because the network was down. But even then, some people were still able to get online, so even that wasn't absolute. Oh, and the 50GB recordable Blu-ray discs, Sony canned them? Nobody was burning games onto blank Blu-rays like it's 2006. What are you even talking about? Look, I get it. You really wanted to make this some big W for PC, but maybe next time, just take 10 seconds to Google before you hit send. Switch to Xbox Microsoft got your back? My dude, are you serious? You're out here pledging loyalty to a corporation that spent the last decade buying studios just to gut them and fire tens of thousands of people. Xbox has had almost 0 real exclusives in the past 10 years. Xbox One had, what, 5 exclusives? And 3 of them flopped so hard they probably wish they stayed canceled. Microsoft has your back. You mean the same Microsoft that absolutely butchered Halo? The same company that disrespected the most die-hard Halo fans to the point where Bungie literally bought themselves out just to escape? The same Microsoft that shoved Kinect down your throat, that tried to make Xbox always online so you couldn't even trade your own discs? The same Microsoft that made Windows worse every single year just so they could push you onto their garbage subscription services? And you really think they have your back? Microsoft is one of the most anti-consumer companies on the planet. Every single piece of hardware they've ever put out besides the 360 was a failure. They didn't even create Windows, they just bought it. The original visionary behind Xbox was pushed out in 2002, and the brand has been running on fumes ever since. Oh, you want receipts? Let's go. Microsoft has a long history of anti-consumer moves, and Xbox has been a huge part of that. Here are just a few examples. Microsoft tried to force the Xbox One to be always online just to function. If your console wasn't connected to the internet, you couldn't even play single-player games. People rightfully lost their minds, and after massive backlash, Microsoft was forced to backpedal. They also tried to kill used game sales by tying every disc to your Xbox account. You couldn't lend a game to a friend, trade it in, or resell it unless you jumped through ridiculous hoops. gamers. Sony absolutely clowned them with that famous how to share your games on PS4 video, where all they did was hand a disc to each other. Microsoft had to drop the policy, but the fact they even tried it says everything. When Xbox One launched, it came bundled with the Kinect, which had to be plugged in at all times for the console to even work. And it was always listening. People called it a privacy nightmare. And again, Microsoft had to backtrack because no one wanted a mandatory surveillance camera watching them play games. Game Pass started off strong, but now Microsoft is removing games from the service, even first-party ones that were supposedly permanent. They also raised the price and introduced a weaker core version while slowly pushing people toward the more expensive Ultimate tier. They're baiting you in with Netflix for games, but slowly making it worse. Microsoft went on a studio shopping spree. Bethesda, Activision Blizzard, Obsidian, Ninja Theory. But what happened? They gutted staff, shut down teams, and laid off thousands of developers. They didn't buy these studios to make better games. They bought them to control the industry. Just look at Redfall. Arcane Austin was a top-tier studio, and now it's dead. Windows Store and forced digital shift. Microsoft keeps trying to force people into their ecosystem, whether it's shoving the Windows Store onto gamers, making digital ownership more restrictive, or integrating ads into Windows itself. And now there are rumors that the next Xbox will be digital only, meaning no more disc ownership, just whatever Microsoft lets you access. They completely mismanaged the Halo franchise, treating one of gaming's biggest series like an afterthought. Halo Infinite was supposed to be a 10-year platform, but Microsoft axed content, delayed features for years, and abandoned their own live service plans. They fired tons of industry's staff while pumping money into buying new studios.
Aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360. That's your message if you don't, if you don't like it?
If you have zero access to the internet, that is an offline device. I mean, seriously, when I read the blogs and thought about who's really the most impacted, there was a person who said, hey, I'm on a nuclear sub.
Right.
And I don't even know what it means to be on a nuclear sub, but I've got to imagine that it's not easy to get an internet connection.